Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast. Hello, I'm Marc Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the pleasure of Joel Berwitz, the CRO of Boxxe in the virtual house. How are we doing, Joel?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm really good. Thanks so much for coming on. Joel, so for the listeners that don't know you, could you sort of give us a bit of an introduction about Boxxe and why you were attracted to the company? Because I know you probably followed Phil from CDW because you were working together there, I guess.
Yeah, so spent a really good 8 years or so at CDW, helping in a team that built managed services and cloud capabilities there in a reseller that traditionally had sold product. So we'd been through the process of moving from a traditional product reseller through to an MSP. And so when Phil sold Kelway, as it was, to CDW in 2015, I think it was, 3 years later, had another conversation, and there was an opportunity to rethink the way in which the reseller world works and think about things and doing things in a different kind of way. So that was what drew me to Boxxe. And today we are a technology services provider. The background of Boxxe, actually, or the acquisition, was through a company called Software Box, or SBL. Yeah. And SBL's heritage was selling hardware and software to predominantly public sector, a little bit into the private sector. And we have, over the past couple of years, gone through a huge amount of change. Lots of new people. People have left. People have joined. I like to think of us now as an organisation that drives towards some digital outcomes for our customers. That looks at things in a way which we look at things from a sustainability standpoint, and we're just trying to really look at every aspect of what a traditional reseller or managed services provider would do, and do things in a slightly different way. We know that if we go up against organizations like CDW, Softcat, Computer Center, that we're going to have to do something different and feel a bit different. So the rebrand was last year from SBL to Boxxe, and hopefully we've done that. We look a bit like a technology services company.
What's been, you mentioned there, CDW mainly selling kit, and you obviously gone over to more of an MSP. What's been the main differences in the transition that you've had to sort of make to sort of like go from a company that traditionally you're thinking, I've been selling kit into the market plus services, but now to become a sort of, everyone wants to make the transition, Joel, to become a true MSP provider. So how have you made that transition, and what attracted you to do it?
Well, I think in the first instance, when you go on that, everyone's trying to go on that journey, like you say. I think you've got to get it. You've got to lead it from the front. You've got to make sure that everybody in the business is bought into making those changes, and then it filters down through all the different departments and the way in which you interact with your customers. You've got to be really customer focused and make sure that the conversations that you're having are it's a bit of a cliche, but are outcome based. And so a lot of the changes that we've made in Boxxe over the past 2 years have all been building capability. So having the right technical resources. There was already a bank of technical resources there. We built on that. But predominantly, it's about enabling our salespeople to have a different type of conversation, which, as you know, is a really tricky part of that change. A lot of it's driven from the commission base, how we pay people, and then how we enable them. And it's fair to say that we've had a lot of change in our sales team, but we're now starting to see the fruits of a new brand and the way in which our salespeople are interacting with our customers, the fact that we've got more capability today. But I think you've got to have all of those things. You can't just try in one part. You've got to make sure that the whole organization is driving towards that end goal.
Yeah, and you mentioned something there that's quite topical at the moment about companies paying differently on sort of commission structures and how they actually pay people. So can you go into a bit of detail about that? Because a lot of resellers out there are still paying people on a GP number, and that's what they're paying, and they're paying them for, they're not really thinking about the run rate or the contract value. How did you actually make the transition, and how did you actually start paying people differently, or trying to get a different type of person to pay them differently?
Yeah, I don't think we're at the end of that journey. There's a fine balance between making sure that you keep the core of the organization and the money coming in from what it is that we have done for the past 30 years. At the same time, we want, salespeople the majority are coin operated. So therefore we've got to incentivize them, and we incentivize them double to sell services than they were previously. And I think that's just the start of the process. The enablement, the salespeople have got to feel comfortable to have those conversations. There's an awful lot of historical transactional salespeople who are just not comfortable sitting in front of a customer and asking them questions about outcomes and solutions, and they're just, it's not a world that they've ever been in. So I think with a mixture of enabling our core sales team, and they're a talented bunch, so it's just about changing some of the tactics that they use, but also bringing in people who have got experience from other organizations, not necessarily from resellers. And actually, we haven't brought in that many from other resellers because that's not the angle that we've taken. We try to bring in people from software services organizations or people who have sold outcome-based products before. But when our existing salespeople look at the people that have come in, the enablement, the fact that they're getting paid more, like I say, it's just the more and more stuff that you do, the more and more change you continue to see. But it doesn't happen overnight, that's for sure.
Now, talking of change, you changed jobs right in the middle of a pandemic. So you went from whatever role you had before, from going from the CRO role in August. So tell me about that transition, because that must have been really, really difficult going into a different role, but two, then having to manage people remotely that maybe you was it a new team, or how was it? How did it work?
Yeah, so I was looking after, or was responsible for teams that were involved with marketing and product and innovations, etc. And it became a kind of natural course for all of those conversations alongside our sales team to be driven by a single business unit, let's call it. So actually, it came from one of the lessons that I think we'd learned in our previous world, where if you've got a siloed environment where your people who are selling cloud, for example, and the people who are selling hardware and the people who are selling specific software vendors and hardware vendors all have a different approach and they all have different motivations, then it's difficult for the customer to get the right answer. They whoever they go to, they get the answer for whoever's motivated in a certain way. So for us to have one organization that looks after sales and software and hardware and marketing services, it just made perfect sense for the customer to get the right outcome. And me in particular, I've not really found it too difficult. I think that we have this ongoing conversation internally about people who are in front of screens all day. I think that there's huge challenges with that, we know.
Yeah.
But if you look at the raw facts, the amount of work that you can do in front of your screen, productivity-wise, you'd find it difficult to argue that being in an office makes that much difference from a pure work perspective. Social is completely different. I think, if you're having a social, then you'd want to be together in the same room, or you want to be in the pub or restaurant. But to get in the car and travel and to be a few hours on the road and all the messing around that goes with having meetings, to be honest with you, I haven't found that part and managing people too difficult over a screen. Getting to know them inherently, I think, is the next thing. You need to have that social aspect with them in order to get that far.
Yeah, because if you had to sort of recruit and manage people that you haven't met yet and they've actually integrated in the team, has that happened?
Yeah, so I'll give you the stats on our recruitment. So we've now got 180 people. We've added 90 of those in the last couple of years, and I think 50 in the pandemic. So wow. You see people who I was actually lucky enough to be in the office a couple of weeks ago, and there's one guy I hadn't met who was 6'4", and I was like, you have no idea. You only see people to hear and and I was like, wow. But there's an awful lot of people that we've employed during the pandemic. But again, from a productivity perspective, I don't think it's made a huge amount of difference working from home.
So what have you seen over the last 12 months? What's been the main changes that Boxxe have done over the last 12 months? Because you obviously started on a journey 2 years ago, and then obviously the last 12 months have been challenging for everyone. So what's happened with Boxxe? What have you been changing?
I mean, loads of stuff. I think even starting with the office. So we were already moving office, and we were moving office from a small I don't know what it is, a village town 20 minutes north of York into the centre of York. We'd already designed what that office was going to look like. Fixed rows of desks in pre-COVID style. So the first thing to do was to look at that office and make sure that it was relevant for today. And everybody will tell you that it's just a collaborative environment now that most organizations are looking for. So there's a big change in that. And now we've had the opportunity to test out, forced upon us, but test out whether remote working and having people outside of the local area works. And now we know that it works. So that's going to be something that is going to continue for us. I guess the next part of that conversation is, what is your work from home and remote working policy going to look like for the future? And that's another ongoing debate inside our organization. But they're the key things. And then, I guess it's on a personal level for me, I think the amount of video conferencing calls that have been back to back on a daily basis, it got to the end of the year and I was just getting to a position where it was burning me out. So I've learned over the past 3 months that there's a huge advantage to getting out there and walking. I think I know every walking path within about 5 miles. I think I've done 4 million steps or something in the last year. And the need not to think that you need to be on a call all day, every day, in order to feel like you're busy is something that I've learned personally. But there's a huge amount of change that's gone on in
Joel, have you had to adjust your sort of management style or leadership style in terms of doing sort of video conferences? And what I mean by that is managing people from remotely and home working that maybe that you haven't, some obviously you haven't met, or maybe they haven't got the facilities at home to be, being sort of remote, they can't actually get into the office. Is there been any sort of challenges from you thinking, I've actually got to get video calls, or you're trying to do town halls or whatever it is? Is that
again, I think having spoken to a lot of people over video has been okay. I think the bit that you miss is the social side. So I don't know as much about some of the people just out of the pure fact that we've not been at a dinner or outside or bumping into each other in the office. You kind of have to make sure that we have those early conversations at the start of virtual meetings to make sure that you're chatting about something that's personal or social. But from a management perspective, I feel like we've adapted to the changes that as we've needed to, and had the right conversations when we needed to. Lots of touch bases, as much communication. I don't think we've got it all right yet. As much communication as we can at the right time. We're starting to survey our people a bit more, but I don't think it's been a huge change because again we're going through so much change anyway.
Yeah. How difficult has it been to implement new plans or changes to the organisations when you probably haven't met everyone face to face, or you haven't had those discussions in person? Has it been more challenging?
I don't think so. I think that again, you have the opportunity to communicate probably more often than you would have done on a group level over video than in the past. So all the things that we've implemented, we've been pretty deliberate about. A lot of those things were planned pre-COVID. They might have changed during COVID, but we've managed to be able to communicate to people. We've managed to be able to make sure that we've got feedback from the teams, from our people, and there's lots of technologies that you can use in order to get feedback, not only surveying people, but live feedback. Slido is one that comes to mind, for example. So I feel like that we've got the message out, and the changes will just continue to happen in the future. I think that we as an organization now feel like we are going to stay as a work anywhere company.
Right.
And I think that when you think about the motivations of different organizations as they create these new policies, it's all down to what suits that particular company. So, for example, if you look at the guy from Goldman Sachs, he called it an aberration. He expects everybody to come back to the office, but probably because they've got millions and millions of square foot of office that they need filling. Otherwise, it's just a complete waste of money and a complete waste of space. Yeah. Whereas if you look at, I was reading about it yesterday about Hopin, the new virtual meeting company, now got 500 people, completely remote working, will never have an office. But that suits them because they never had an office in the first place. There were 5 people about a year ago. So I think that we're the same. I think we've set ourselves a path now to be able to be extremely productive working from home, and we'll bring people together for socials as and when we need to, or if there's reasons that they need to be in the office from a working perspective, we'll bring them together. But it's been an interesting journey, that one that's been forced upon us, but I think we made it. We've learned a lot from it.
One thing I was really interested in hearing about, obviously, 50 people that you've hired during COVID. Now that is a lot of people, and almost 25% of your workforce now, if you're at 180 people. How have you managed to integrate them and keep the culture when, quite frankly, they didn't know what the culture was before they even joined?
Again, because we're changing so much, the culture is changing with us, and all the new people that are coming in. First of all, they know they're coming into a work anywhere environment, so it's not as if that we are fiercely protective of our of our culture. It's changing with us. And actually, when I speak to lots of the people who have joined us on a day-to-day basis, the one part of the culture of SBL, or one of the parts of the culture of SBL that we will do our hard, or work our hardest not to break, is the supportiveness of our team. And so a lot of the new starters say that the ability to collaborate and the way in which we structured the organization and the onboarding process means that they get introduced to a lot of people in those first couple of weeks, albeit on video, but it's a social stroke work conversation. And it's encouraged that they go and speak to all of our leadership team, all of our management team, and as many people from around the organization as they can. So actually, when I speak to people, they seem to be able to slot in fairly well and integrate fairly well. And again, that's more fuel to the fire of work from anywhere and how effective it can be. Again, and I caveat that with the point that at some point we have to bring everyone together for socials, and when we can, we will. But in the future, do we feel like we need to recruit from in and around York, where traditionally it's been quite difficult to find decent talent?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think for your policy now be recruiting from anywhere? You'll manage to sort of recruit people from anywhere in the UK?
Yeah, we've had people that have kind of tongue in cheek asked us whether they can move to Spain and
brilliant.
Can I move to Guernsey? But the reality is, again, should be an option. I think that the organisations that have this type of work anywhere policy will ultimately, especially with the younger workforce, will definitely win. Talented people will want to be working for an organisation that trusts them, gives them the tools and the technology to do the work wherever they want to, and the ability to be anywhere in the world and meet up when as needed. Yeah,
absolutely. Something we touched on before we started on off air was benefit corporation. So tell me a bit about BCorp and what that means to Boxxe.
Yeah, so BCorp is a movement of organisations. Started in the US in 2006, so not particularly old. It's about 5 years old. In the UK, over the past couple of years, I think they're up to 500 BCorp accredited companies, and it is a way of structuring and running your organisation for both profit but purpose as well. And ultimately, you're legally bound, so you rewrite your articles of association as an organisation to be driven by both profit and purpose. And so BCorp is all about looking after the people that work for you, your customers, the supply chain, the community around you, the environment. And actually, I can tell you from having us as an organisation going through this accreditation process over the past 12 months, it is not a tick box exercise. It is running through the veins of the organisation in almost everything that we do. We think about the sustainability or environmental governance aspect of the way in which we work. And we feel like that we're going to be the first, certainly reseller stroke MSP that is BCorp accredited. And in the future, I really believe that this group of ESG companies, or the ones that really take it as a mantra for their organization, that there'll be an ecosystem of organizations that work together that are bound by this kind of level of sustainability. So it's something that we're really keen on. You'll see us talk about it more and more as time goes on. Our accreditation hopefully will be complete in the next few months. But we want to be leading in that way, and it's certainly in our market.
Okay. The last sort of couple of things I wanted to talk about with you, obviously, mental health has been a massive topic over the last 12 months. And whilst there's been loads of benefits in terms of people working remotely and having flexibility, there's also been some detrimental effects in people, loneliness, anxiety, depression, mental health challenges all over the channel. I've heard horror stories for the last 12 months. How have you managed to sort of deal with that at Boxxe? And have you had any sort of like specific initiatives that you've been doing that you could share with the listeners?
I think we're still learning.
Yeah.
Definitely. I guess we've done all the things that you would find typical of organizations where we want to bring people together, EAPs and coffee catch-ups and things like that. I guess it's that old adage of everybody, same storm, different boat. Everybody's got to go through this time in a different way. You've got people who are by themselves at home, and you've got people on the flip side who are surrounded by family and homeschooling and things like that. So I think for us, it's all about can we I hesitate to use the word persuade, but persuade people to talk to us. Because I think we can do as an organization as much as we want to do, but we need to hear from the people that work with us if they have challenges, and they need to take advantage of some of the things that we as an organization are offering them. But there's no doubt it's a tough time. That those dark few months, January, February.
Oh yeah, horrendous
in lockdown. When it was a dark time for pretty much everybody, I think, on one level or another.
Yeah.
And I think that now that we're through that, I think everybody, I was just telling you before, now that I've got a haircut, I kind of feel like
yeah, you're looking better, Joel. You're looking better.
I feel like it's the kind of end of that period of time, but we're still learning. We've still got, I think, things that we can do better in that area for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing about the channel. There's one thing, managing a business through lockdown through the summer months, that's maybe a bit easier. But those winter months, I think, and the second lockdown, I think it really took its toll on the channel. And a lot of people, well, I was hearing lots of challenges in the market and horror stories in the market of people just, one company I dealt with, they're actually a CRM winner. They had 8 people in their external sales team, 5 of them off with mental health issues, just teams just decimated. So,
What did you guys do? How do you guys deal with it internally?
It was almost what you said. I liked what you said. We're still learning. I think it was a real challenge. We had a bit of a tsunami. We had the last 12 months where, Q1 last year completely ignorant to COVID. Q2 was just a tsunami. There was 170 odd vacancies we had in one day. The next day on March 25th or whatever it was, we went down to 7. And then you start over the summer months, it was easier. But the last 3 months, whilst the market's been really good, mental health has been really challenging for people because, like you said, it's same boat but different storm. People are managing it differently. So when you said that, I was thinking, yeah, we're still learning. We're still learning now. The only thing I think there is now is there is light at the end of the tunnel. I said to you today that it was the pub garden. We actually went at lunchtime. It was almost like it was nice to get together as a team, even though it was in an enclosed and we were wearing masks. It was actually nice to get together. And that was one of the first times that we've done that. So that's
I've got to tell you that having not been in the office for 4 months, at least 4 months, and even when I went before, it was only for a couple of days. So let's call it the guts of 9 months.
Yeah.
Going back in last week, I said it to a few people. It's a bit like getting your soul back, and feeling a bit human again. And I think that you need that social. It's the social aspect. Again, I come back to the conversation about whether you could argue all day as to whether you can work as effectively in a room together or over video. But I think from the social aspect, clearly you have to see people. You've got to be together if you want to get to know people on a different level.
What's your view, Joel, on you're based in, your company's based in York, but obviously I'm presuming you do business in the city, about how the city will get back to sort of getting meetings and lunches and business lunches and coffees and drinks after work, because people have been saving a lot of money through expenses, not having travel fares and lunches and all that sort of stuff. I was speaking to Mike Norris last year, and he said to me his travel budget was £6 million for computer centre, and obviously he doesn't need to do it now. And I was thinking, do you see the sort of like the business lunches and the drinks after work coming back, or do you think people will be a bit more reserved?
I think that if I take my own circumstance, I used to jump on the tube and jump into go into central London every day, and a lot of the time I didn't need to go there, and it was just wasted time. And so I can't see that people are going to do that again. And if you think about virtual events, getting thousands and thousands of people to Vegas for a Microsoft conference, is that going to happen in the same way when the conference itself could be done virtually, and arguably is more you're more productive doing it that way. So the reason for going there again comes down to work versus social. So can I see it happening? I think it will for social reasons, and I think it will for work reasons, but not for every meeting.
No,
you don't need to go in for every meeting. Not only the T&E savings, which again for us have been huge over the past 12 months, but also, again, I go back to BCorp from a sustainability standpoint. You know, we've got 40 odd salespeople all in the car all day. You know, what's the car? You know, the sustainability savings flying all around the world. Sustainability. I think I just can't see it coming back in exactly the same. I'd definitely be a spike because everyone wants to get out there straight after lockdown.
Yeah.
Feel like they're free again, but I can't see it being exactly the same in the long term. It's gonna, everyone talks about the hybrid world. It will be. It's just a matter of what that eventually looks like.
Yeah. And my last question for you, Joel, I'm not asking you to be Mystic Meg or anything, but what's your prediction for the sort of like the next 3 quarters? Where do you see the IT channel moving towards the next sort of for the rest of 2021?
I think one of the things that we've tried to differentiate ourselves with is being digital, and when I say that, I mean improving the customer experience. And so I think that digital transformation is a term that gets thrown around too much, but it's the only phrase that I can think of that works for what we're doing internally. So again, looking at the way in which we interact with our customers, the way in which they buy from us, the information they get from us, can we drive that through a digital engagement and have our salespeople in front of customers consulting and driving outcomes? Can we surface data for our customers to help them to become more effective in the way in which they work every day? And I think that's a challenge for a lot of resellers and MSPs, just because of the legacy systems that they use. But I think it's one that if organizations don't look at their own internal transformation, then the ones that can and do, and the ones that can drive customer engagement and a different level of customer experience will ultimately win the day. And I think that's something that again, we've been looking at pretty heavily internally. And I think it's something that can we'll see that will change, even down to things like e-commerce, and everyone's gone online. So our world of no one's really perfected e-commerce in the reseller world, for example.
No.
So can we drive that level of digitalization in a slightly different way? And then from a pure technology, I think a lot of looking at automation and the way in which they can automate their own processes to drive more efficiency and be more effective. And I think that's something again that we feel is a technology that is going to become more and more important over the course of this year, especially as we come out of the pandemic. There's an awful lot of opportunity. That's the one thing that we know. We're so lucky to work in technology. When you look around, some of my mates that work in other industries during this time have just been decimated. So the fact that we work in technology and we've just got opportunities left, right, and centre, I think is something that I'm thankful for. I know, but I think there's so much opportunity out there.
Yeah, brilliant, Joel. Thanks so much for your time. You've been a great guest.